Heela joins us now from Zurich in Switzerland. Heela, thanks so much for coming on to share your time with us. This is a simple, but actually a really difficult question to answer, I think. What does justice actually mean for Afghanistan after what it's lived through?
Well, justice is an extremely large word, but in the context of conflict in Afghanistan, I would like to focus on transitional justice, and the way you can define that are basically judiciary and non-judiciary instruments and mechanisms that, such as like trials, memorials, reparations, restitutions, truth commissions, that could allow people to voice their concerns, especially the victims of the war who have lost their dear ones, who have lost their houses, their loved ones, and also for them to have a space to raise their grievances and be able to say, this is what we want if we want to create a peaceful society in transition from conflict to a society where we could co-live or live next to each other with those perpetrators who have harmed us.
Reconciliation is something that can bring people closer together. Accountability can give closure to victims, but it can also cause extreme difficulties in negotiations with those who are supposed to be held to account. How do you see those two issues going together?
Those reconciliation without justice, reconciliation without inclusivity and giving people voices is not possible. And accountability is extremely important in the current situation, because post-Bonn agreement in 2001, the UN tried with the civil society in Afghanistan to undertake this notion of transitional justice. They did quite a lot of research. They did have meetings with people to be able to, address some of these crimes and war crimes that were, committed during the civil war. But in 2007, under President Karzai, we had an amnesty, because a lot of those people were in the government and they were running the government. Today, if once again you sacrifice people and their needs and their voices, then just for the sake of power sharing and for people to hold certain governing structures, then the reconciliation will not be sustainable.
Do you believe the Taliban when they say they don't want to impose their will on the people, which is exactly what they did when they were in government?
Trust needs to be built with time and actions. And the actions so far, not only during the government, but even since the peace agreement on 29th of February that has been signed, has been imposition of their will. Not sticking to what they, sticking to the point that they will not kill any American soldiers, but the violence for Afghans have been going on. And the fact of the matter that even yesterday they said that we're the one with plan B, and that if the peace doesn't work, our plan B is to resort back to military action, which means we will resort back to violence. And therefore, to trust what they say is extremely difficult, but you need to take it cautiously. And they need to prove that they will not impose by action and call a ceasefire. If they really want peace, if they really want to integrate into the social fabric and political fabric of Afghanistan, they need to announce a ceasefire.
But so far, the government's called for one, and just, I believe it was the day after the peace talks began, which was Saturday, there were 18 different regions of Afghanistan that suffered attacks. So we have the issue of trust, and then coming out of the peace talks, which, frankly, Heela, we believe that it could take a year at least, right? It could take possibly longer. We have no idea what they're talking about and the decisions that are being made and how long this process will take. What happens if down the line, the Taliban, let's say they enter the political process in some form, they gain control of a town or a city or a province? What's to stop them going back to their decisions which didn't allow women to work and didn't allow girls to get an education. The governors of Pakistan of Afghanistan, excuse me, have significant power.
It's important to mention here that the people of Afghanistan and the constitution of Afghanistan will determine whether what they want from the Taliban and from their rule. But the point is, when you have a gun in your hand, it's very much difficult for people then to voice out as to what they want, and especially if they're tired of war. So this is why I constantly say that there must be a ceasefire, there must be a space given. Now, when you're saying that there will be this dialogue or the intra-Afghan dialogue will go on for a year, I hope it does, and I hope it takes its due course of time, because peace cannot be rushed at all. And in addition to that, the willingness of parties in conflict must be considered, because at this point of time, the parties are just talking about the kind of governing structure they want, but not necessarily that they want peace and end of war. And this is what I, as an Afghan and as a researcher on peace, I'm waiting to hear. And in order to get that, you need to give it time. You need to give this process time.
Heela, thank you so much for coming on to the News Hour. Really appreciate it. Heela Najibullah in Zurich, Switzerland.